All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's regular meeting on May 26th. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:03. First up will be roll call. I'm sorry, Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Sorry, now we will go to roll call.
Mayor Hudson,
Present.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Present.
Councilmember Hanson,
Here.
Councilmember Pride, here, and Councilmember Busby.
Here.
Thank you.
Perfect. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Okay. With that, we will go into item 5, ceremonial matters. First item up is 5A, Proclamation National Poppy Day, presented by Councilmember Gary Hanson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. City of Willows Proclamation, National Poppy Day. Whereas since World War I, the red poppy has served as a powerful symbol of remembrance and hope, honoring the sacrifice of those who have died in service to our nation and supporting those who continue to serve. And whereas National Poppy Day is observed on the Friday before Memorial Day, falling this year on May 22nd, 2026, as a time to recognize the extraordinary courage and selflessness of the men and women of the United States Armed Forces. And whereas the Veterans of Foreign Wars and Auxiliary distributes red poppies each year and invites the public to wear them as a tribute to fallen heroes and as a visible expression of support for living veterans and active duty service members. And whereas donations received in exchange for poppies directly support the rehabilitation and well-being of veterans, military personnel, and their families, providing vital resources and assistance. And whereas it is fitting and proper that all Americans, by wearing a red poppy, honor those who have given their lives in the cause of liberty and reflect upon the enduring cost of our freedoms. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Gary Hanson, on behalf of Mayor Hudson and the Willows City Council and the citizens of Willows, declare May 22nd, 2026 as National Poppy Day and encourage all citizens to wear a red poppy as a symbol of remembrance and gratitude to those who have served and sacrificed for our country. In witness whereof, Mayor Hudson has hereunto set his hand and official seal this 28th day of May, 2026. And Rebecca Warnock is with the Veterans of Foreign Wars Auxiliary is here to receive the proclamation. And just a final note, may God bless the fallen military personnel who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms that we enjoy, and their families, and all veterans and active duty members for the service to our country. Rebecca.
All right, next item will be 5B, Proclamation Memorial Day. City of Willows Proclamation Memorial Day. Whereas Memorial Day stands as a solemn and sacred day of remembrance for the men and women of the United States Armed Forces who gave their lives in defense of our nation, our values, and our freedom. And whereas since the time of the Civil War, Americans have gathered on this day to honor the memories of our fallen heroes by placing flowers and flags on graves, holding ceremonies, and observing moments of silence in their tribute. And whereas the freedoms we enjoy today have been preserved through the ultimate sacrifice of generations of service members who face danger and death on the battlefields around the world. Whereas Memorial Day is a time for all citizens to reflect on the high costs of liberty, to express deep gratitude to those who have died in service of our nation, and to support the families they have left behind. Whereas it is our solemn duty to ensure the memory of their sacrifice endures through acts of remembrance, community service, and continued commitment to the principles they defended. Now, therefore, I, Evan Hudson, Mayor of the City of Willows, On behalf of the Willows City Council and the citizens of Willows, do hereby proclaim Monday, May 25th, 2026 as Memorial Day in the city of Willows and call upon all residents to honor our fallen military heroes with reverence, gratitude, and respect. In witness hereof, I have hereunto set my hand and official seal this 26th day of May, 2026. And to receive this is Rebecca Warnock of the VFW Auxiliary. Next up is item 5C, Proclamation National Forest Week, presented by Councilmember Lori Pride.
Thank you. National Forest Week proclamation. Whereas the Mendocino National Forest, headquartered in Willows, California, is a unique and cherished part of our national heritage, distinguished as the only national forest in California without a major paved road or highway crossing it, preserving its wild character and remote beauty. And whereas spanning more than 900,000 acres across the Intercoast Range, Mendocino National Forest provides critical habitat for wildlife, vital watersheds, and recreational opportunities that enrich the lives of residents and visitors alike. And whereas the forest contributes significantly to the local economy and quality of life in Willows and surrounding communities through tourism, sustainable resource use, wildfire management, and job creation. And whereas the dedicated professionals, volunteers, Indigenous communities, and partners who care for Mendocino National Forest exemplify a deep commitment to conservation, land restoration, and public engagement. And whereas National Forest Week is a time to celebrate the natural beauty and ecological importance of our public lands, recognize our shared responsibility to protect them for future generations, and encourage residents and visitors to enjoy Mendocino National Forest during National Trails Day and the nationwide Fee-Free Day on June 6, 2026. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Lori Pride, on behalf of Evan Hudson, Mayor of the City of Willows, and on behalf of the Willows City Council and the citizens of Willows, do hereby proclaim the week of May 31 through June 6, 2026 as National Forest Week in Willows, California, and encourage all residents and visitors to explore, enjoy, and help protect the forest that defines so much of our region's identity and natural legacy, including participating in the National Trails Day and nationwide Fee-Free Day on June 6, 2026. So here to accept this from the Forest Service is Public Affairs Officer Laura Leidner and Fuels Person still Shiloh, Fire Management Shiloh's.
So we are going to have 3 events for National Trails Day. On Friday, June 5th, we're going to have a waterfall hike to Snow Mountain Wilderness out at West Crockett. And then on the 6th, on the Saturday, we're going to have an OHV Trail Volunteer Work Day out of our Stony Ford Work Center. And then on the other side of the forest at Lake Pillsbury, we're going to have another trail work day at a nature hike at Sunset Campground. So those are all opportunities to come explore your backyard and take care of our trails. And Shiloh wanted to share a couple words too.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Lori, and everyone for recognizing the Mendocino National Forest. I couldn't say any better. Actually, you took some of the words that I was going to speak to, so I'm not going to repeat. But again, Willows is very important to us as it is the home to the supervisor's office, and that's where we do a lot of our planning and implementation to preserve our vital lands. And so, if anyone from the public or here would like to come in and have questions, please come in, and one of us will greet you. And hopefully, take in what you guys have and deliver it to the folks that need it to bring solutions. So thank you again for the recognition. And
Yeah, we really appreciate, especially fire management with the forest fires that we've had on the Mendocino in the last few years. There's a huge challenge ahead. So we appreciate, I know Shiloh, you've been here for a very long time, and it's just good to see familiar faces and new faces. I spent the first 17 years of my career on the forest, so working in fire. So appreciate you
Going
guys.
anywhere, so.
Yay.
Been here for 5 years.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're glad you're here.
Okay, with that, we will continue on to item 6, public comment and consent calendar forum. All items on the consent calendar are considered routine and may be approved by a single vote unless removed for separate discussion by the council or city manager. Individuals wishing to speak on consent items or matters not on the agenda are asked to complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor and council members and are limited to 3 minutes. By law, the council cannot discuss or take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. Is there any public comment or anything not on the agenda? Yes, sorry.
Not public comment, but I just wanted to clarify item 6D for the benefit of the public in particular, but also the council, that item was actually already technically approved by the council at the last meeting. However, the actual budget for the approval of the 3 contracts was not in the recommendation and the approval process. So I wanted to bring it back with the dollar amount for the 3 agreements, but didn't think it was necessary to put it back on discussion and action since you did discuss it considerably at the last meeting. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, is there any public comment on anything not on the posted agenda or any of the items mentioned? With that, I will give it to the pleasure of the council.
I would move to approve the consent calendar as presented, items 6A, 6B, 6C, and 6D.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor. I do have a comment when you're ready.
First and second, any comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In reference to item 6C, the weed abatement contract award, I just wanted to say that both Robbie Burt and Tony Tapia, the 2 contractors who submitted bids, are both excellent contractors, do outstanding work. And this was simply a financial decision. So I just wanted to point that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. They're both top-notch men and run top-notch companies. So thank you.
All right. With that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed 5-0. Next up, item 7, discussion and action calendar. All matters on the discussion and action calendar will be discussed and acted on individually. Individuals wishing to speak on these items are asked to complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk. Comments should be directed to the mayor and council members and are limited to 3 minutes. By law, the council cannot discuss or take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. Item 7A, November 2026 Cannabis Tax Ordinance and Measure. Recommended action, receive presentation regarding the proposed cannabis business tax measure, discuss potential placement of the measure on the November 3rd, 2026 general election ballot, direct staff to introduce the ordinance at the June 9th, 2026 city council meeting, and prepare the cannabis tax measure language and resolution for the June 23rd, 2026 city council meeting agenda. Presented by Mark Lovelace, Senior Policy Advisor, HDL Companies. Marty, do you have anything to add?
Just quickly that the council directed us to work on a cannabis tax ordinance for the November ballot. And we went ahead and hired HDL Companies, and Mark Lovelace is the advisor on this. And he has prepared the draft ordinance that he'll be presenting tonight that will be considered for the November ballot. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back here again. Having been here back in March, I'll pass on some of the introductory stuff, but I am Mark Lovelace. I'm a senior policy advisor for HDL Companies. I've been with the company for about 8 years. And as a reminder about HDL, we provide a lot of different services for counties and cities in California. We work only for public sector agencies. We don't have any customers in the private sector, includes the cannabis industry. And when we are working on cannabis issues, our goal is just to provide you and our clients with the best information possible to support your decision-making process, but we remain agnostic about the outcomes and leave that up to you to wade through to find the best outcome for your own community.
Mark, can I ask you to speak a little closer to the mic?
That better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The objectives for our discussion tonight are the goals to provide a presentation with a brief overview of the draft cannabis tax ordinance. As you recall, at the March 10th council meeting, I outlined some of the specific issues that would require direction from the council to frame the preparation of the ordinance. I'm going to walk through the draft ordinance and point out where each of the council's directions have been incorporated and addressed within the ordinance. And then there'll be, of course, an opportunity to hear from the public and for the council to provide any further direction for changes to the draft ordinance, if any, following which we'll discuss the next steps for placing the measure on the November 3rd ballot. At the March 10th meeting, the council provided these, there we go. These specific directions for developing the ordinance. Council directed that the ordinance include a maximum rate of 10% of gross receipts with no minimum rate. Council would then come back after adoption by the voters to set the actual or initial rate for the ordinance. Council directed that the ordinance should include all potential cannabis business types, even though retailers are the only business type currently allowed, and there is no current expectation or anticipation of changing that. Given that, the council also wanted a clear statement that the ordinance doesn't in any way compel the city to allow any other cannabis business types. If the council were to allow additional business types in the future, the council would be able to set different rates for each different type as they see fit. So you could have one rate for retail, one rate for wholesale, or even divide it, the lines even further if you chose to. The council would also be allowed to adjust any and all of the cannabis tax rates at any time, provided it does not exceed the maximum rate of 10%. And at the March meeting, your staff had a number of recommendations on some of the administrative details. The ordinance is largely an administrative document with those key factors to be informed by the council as mentioned. But so staff had a number of things to recommend. One was that the ordinance should be placed under Title III, Revenue and Finance of the city's municipal code. The taxes should be remitted monthly instead of quarterly, which I believe the council expressed a desire for that too. Staff recommended that any appeals would be heard by the city manager or her designee. Staff recommended that the cost of issuing the business license be recoverable by a fee, so that all the revenue generated from the ordinance would be available for general government purposes. And lastly, your staff recommended that the measure be placed on the ballot as a general tax rather than a special tax. Cannabis taxes have a very high approval rate when placed on the ballot as a general tax. Of all of the local cannabis tax measures put before the voters in California since 2016, those placed on the ballot as a general tax have had a 91% success rate, while those placed on the ballot as a special tax have only had about a 47% success rate. Right. So some of those key provisions that we just walked through. The ordinance adds chapter 3.12, to the City of Willow's municipal code. It specifies that it would be a general tax to provide revenue for general governmental purposes. And as a general tax, as noted, it would only require 50% plus one majority to be approved by the voters. The tax would apply to all cannabis businesses operating in the city, whether licensed or not, and whether located in the city or conducting sales by delivery from outside the city. So if there are retailers in Chico or someplace else that are delivering to addresses within the city, they would be subject to the tax. The tax would apply to all sales by cannabis retailers, including non-cannabis products. That is something that some cities choose to make it only, a cannabis retailer can sell cannabis and cannabis products. They can also sell accessories and branded merchandise and a few other things. They're very limited in what they can sell. Some cities choose to only have the cannabis product, but that ends up being a difficult line to walk. And so we strongly support having that be for all sales. The ordinance captures what are called non-arm's length transactions, where a business might move product between corporate divisions. This is mostly a case when you have different business types. So if you had a cannabis a manufacturer, and they have a related distribution entity that's located outside of the city, they could do their manufacturing here and then move it to their distributorship and then say, oh, well, there's nothing to tax. There was no sale. A non-arm's length transaction says, well, the value of the product still needs to be taxed. And so it's a little more complex because there has to be a determination of what the fair market value of the product was at that point. But it is something that's important to we've had a lot of clients that have found had difficulty with that, with businesses trying to move product as a way to avoid paying the tax on it. Again, not really an issue unless you have multiple business types, but it is in there just in case that could happen in the future. And lastly, as discussed previously, the ordinance does provide that the tax would be paid monthly. Next slide. So the tax imposed. The tax is set as a percentage of the gross receipts of the business with a minimum rate of 10% requested. The ordinance establishes only the maximum rate and allows the city to set the actual rate after adoption by the voters. Council can adjust the rate as noted up or down, provided it doesn't exceed the maximum rate allowed by the ordinance. The city only allows cannabis retailers and doesn't anticipate allowing any other types of cannabis business in the future. But should the city choose to allow those other business types, the council would be able to apply the ordinance to them. And then again, by resolution, we'd be able to set different rates for the different types of activities if so desired. Next slide. So this is an important one because this was specifically requested by the council to make sure that it was abundantly clear within the ordinance. Nothing in this chapter shall be interpreted to authorize or permit any business activity that would not otherwise be legal or permissible under laws applicable to the activity at the time the activity is undertaken, nor shall this chapter be interpreted to obligate or compel the city to allow any such type of business activity. So it's really trying to make clear that just because it's covered within the ordinance, within the tax ordinance, does not mean that someone has an argument that therefore it should be presumed to be legal. Next slide. Under section 312.040F definitions, cannabis product, we've modified the definition of cannabis product to address recent changes in state law that ban any products containing any variant of intoxicating THC derived from hemp instead of cannabis. The federal farm bill in, I can't recall which year it was, 2018, I believe, that separated out hemp from cannabis as an attempt to allow for legalized industrial hemp for fiber and products made from that fiber, things of that sort, or as a source for CBD for like topicals, things like that, not for human ingestion. But the industry has been, certain players in the industry have been very, very clever in figuring out how to refine high potency THC derivatives from that. And initially, Prop 64 listed the specific THC derivatives that were regulated by the bill or by the initiative. The recent changes in state law take the approach of saying anything at all that is considered, an intoxicating product derived from any variation of cannabis or hemp is considered a THC product and will be regulated in the cannabis stream. So we wanted to make sure that this captures that appropriately so that you don't have any businesses that are trying to make an end run around both regulation and taxation in that regard. Next slide. 312.040M defines engaged in business as a cannabis business. And that means the commencing, conducting, operating, managing, or carrying on of a cannabis business, whether done as owner or by means of an officer, agent, manager, employee, or otherwise. And again, whether operating from a fixed location in the city or coming into the city from an outside location to engage in such activities. So trying to make sure, again, abundantly clear that any business that is conducting sales within the city from whatever location, that transaction is a taxable transaction. It is covered by the ordinance. Slide. Section 050, tax imposed. This section states the maximum allowable rate for cannabis retailers, which is 10%. Moving to the next one, continuing with 312050, should the city choose to allow additional types of cannabis business in the future, the city may apply a tax at a rate established by resolution of the city council for each business type. Again, not to exceed the maximum rate of 10% of receipts. So with that caveat at the beginning of the ordinance under intent, clarifying that the city has the ability to do this if it so chooses. But again, there is absolutely no obligation, nothing compelling the city to make any decision in the future. Provides maximum flexibility for the city. Slide, please. So some of the administrative provisions, as discussed earlier, the initial term of the ordinance is set for 1 year, but renewals would have a term of 2 years. That was done to match the regulatory permit so that a person can be on the same schedule. It does also allow that the schedule can be adjusted because of, there's separate licensing and processes for getting both the regulatory permit and the business tax license, that if those are on different schedules, that the city does have the ability to adjust those so that they can line up at the same time, just to make things a little easier. It allows that the finance director may promulgate rules and interpretations as necessary to administer and enforce the tax. So even though it's a very detailed ordinance, there's always things that may come up in the implementation of it where the city may want to decide to want to do it this way, do it that way. And as long as it fits the overarching confines of the ordinance, it provides that flexibility to be able to make these kinds of administrative decisions just to make it easier to. Any appeals of the tax or any penalties would be heard by the city manager or her designee. Businesses must preserve records for 3 years to allow the city to conduct audits, ensure accurate reporting and remittance. It also allows the city to amend or modify the ordinance as it sees fit, as long as it is keeping within the original intent of the ordinance. And it provides that if any provisions were to be voided by the courts, other provisions would still stand. So if there were someone that were to challenge some aspect of it and that were to be upheld, it doesn't mean the entire ordinance gets tossed out. It means that that piece needs revised or considered. And that's pretty standard to have a severability clause like that in kind of an ordinance. So so the process for placing the measure on the ballot, our next steps here would be today's discussion is just a presentation and workshop. This is not a formal hearing to introduce the ordinance. So the ordinance will come back to you on June 9th for the first reading. Final ordinance, if there were any changes at that time or coming out of tonight's meeting, those changes would come back for second reading 2 weeks later on June 23rd. The city attorney would be tasked with preparing an impartial analysis of the ordinance as part of the ballot process. And then the ordinance, the ballot statement, the impartial analysis, and all other election materials would have to be forwarded to the county elections office by no later than July 14th, the date that we've been informed. And of course, the election will be held on Tuesday, November 3rd. So that's a very brief overview of it. I believe the entire ordinance is in your packet. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
The sun's kind of almost finally out of your eyes. That had to be fun trying to do that presentation with the sun glaring right at you. Anyway,
I should have brought my sunglasses in, but
you did good.
if I was a little shorter, then
All right. Well, thank you. We'll start with questions. Vice Mayor Thomas, any questions?
Just a few. Just for my own edification, CBD is not considered a cannabis product.
CBD is derived from hemp, would not be considered a cannabis.
How frequently can the city adjust the tax?
The ordinance doesn't place any limitation on that, so the city council could, theoretically adjust it at any time as you fit. We generally advise to, not adjust the tax any more than at most once a year.
I don't
So
think
that-
it's fair to our businesses to be able to make the change any given time. I mean, they have to do a budget, they have to plan their own pricing structure and the whole 9 yards. And so I think it would be important that we limit to a point how often we can make that change. And I don't know what that number would be, but it'd be 1 month or 1 year, 18 months. Give them 6 months in order to implement the tax, whatever, but I'm a business owner from the past. Something changes like that, and all of a sudden you have another 2%, 3% added to your bottom line cost. It's a little hard to swallow. So I would think we should have a time limit. How often we can.
And if I may, I would strongly agree with your comments. The comment about, no more often than annually. That
I would
be-
say at least that, yeah.
That would be pretty exceptional to adjust it. The only client that I can think of that we have that does adjust annually, that's because they are Sonoma County and their cultivation tax is based on square footage. And so they want to adjust it annually to make sure that it stays approximating 2.5%. And so they have to adjust it based upon what current market prices are and all of that to make sure that it's staying on a percentage basis about the same. But absolutely, any business needs to be able to
Sounds like
plan.
there should be quite a formula used in order to set the tax.
It's a lot of work to go through. It requires a lot of presentation by the businesses to provide their pricing information and volume information to come up with a volume weighted average pricing for a lot of subcategories of product and all that. We strongly recommend the gross receipts model because it doesn't require that kind of adjustment. And again, the only place that the square footage really applies at all as a possibility or an alternative is in cultivation, which is my understanding that he has a desire to go that direction.
So addressing the non-arm's length transactions, did I get it right that that could actually be considered a double tax? Or did I miss something?
It would be if the application of it is if the business is saying that we're moving the product from, we're again manufacturing it, cultivating it, whatever, in one jurisdiction, and then we're moving it to our subsidiary in another jurisdiction, not paying tax on it. But the activity, there's still activity happening within that jurisdiction where it was cultivated, manufactured, whatever. And that jurisdiction has an expectation of receiving their portion of the value of the product. Now, if it goes from there, each step in the supply chain, generally, the value of the product increases. And so that is where the determination of fair market value would come in trying to figure if you moved it from a cultivation facility in one city to your distribution facility in the other, the wholesale value of it, moving it between those entities can be one thing. The value of it in that distributorship, selling it to a retailer is going to be, market higher. So there would be some apportionment issue between the two.
So that tax goes to who? The selling, say it was Trinity County versus Willows. So the non-arm's length tax, does that go to Trinity County or does it come to Willows?
Well, if say there was a business, again, this really only really applies to the wholesale activity. To vertically integrated business have a number of different activities ownership. But if there was a cultivator in the city of Willows at some point and they had their distributorship located in Chico, then there'd be an apportionment issue of determining what value, what percentage of the value of the product was generated in the city of Willows by the activity here, and what percentage of the value of the product was generated by the distributorship selling to a retailer.
So if we had a 3% tax and Chico had a 5% tax, they get $8.
It becomes a question of apportionment, which is gets very complex. In many cases, what happens is you have, most often when they do that, they're doing it for an advantageous purpose, such as, if there's a 5% tax on cultivation in the city of Willows, but distribution is not taxed at all in other jurisdictions, then they're moving it there so that they don't have to pay tax on it. Generally what they're going to.
I assume this exists throughout the industry.
It happens a fair bit.
I mean, this provision in the codes.
Yeah, we have that provision because this is common enough that it needs to be addressed. There can be some game playing. What we really try to encourage mostly is in the setting of tax rates to try to maintain some norms with other jurisdictions. So if you had one jurisdiction that's charging 10% rate on cultivation, and then another's charging 2% on distribution, something like that, then they've got a huge incentive to do that, to play those kinds of games. If all wholesale activities are taxed about the same by both within each jurisdiction and among different jurisdictions, then there really isn't any incentive for them to try to hide the ball.
Okay, thank you. For me personally, I want to make sure we're treating our local businesses fairly. And so you talk about all retail sales, including those that may come from out of town. How do we police somebody delivering into town
That is
and collecting the tax? Or not? If we can't catch up to them, then it puts our local businesses at a disadvantage.
Well, the businesses increasingly, businesses that are doing these kinds of deliveries are licensed, or at least displaying a license from the DC. There are some times where we've found businesses that are advertising delivering to locations in San Diego County with a license that's located in Oakland or something like that. And obviously there's some game playing. Does the business whose license is being used know that it's being used in that way? There's a lot of kinds of complexity and game playing that happens. But on the retail side, generally what we see is in a market where there is no reasonable access to cannabis, a place where cannabis businesses of all kinds, including retail, are prohibited. So cannabis consumers don't have the option of going to their local store and buying it, but they can go online and order it and have someone drop it by their house from some neighboring city. So where there's a business incentive, an economic incentive for business in another city to drive 20 or 30 minutes to make the deliveries, the industry will find a way to do it. So by doing this, it requires that just like you may have other businesses like food trucks or other kinds of mobile vendors that maybe their home base is in another city, but they park here during the day when they're doing sales or whatever. They still have to have a local license for that. They're still subject to any applicable taxes from the city. So this just sets up that they would have to go through the same licensing process. It's not the same as this type of license. It's like the food truck. Usually it's $200, $300 for that kind of a.
So opposed to a one-off sale, if they wanted to do regular delivery into the city of Willows, they'd have to apply for the permit and get granted authority under our cannabis ordinance.
Yeah, they're subject to that regardless of whether they've, if they want to conduct one sale or make this their primary market or whatever, delivering from Chico or, wherever, they're still subject to it. It's not based on the volume of sales. So it would be a violation of, the city ordinance for them to deliver without.
As long as we can find them.
We have done work with some jurisdictions where we will research and find all the businesses that advertise that they deliver into a given city. We'll provide a list of all the businesses, identify, here's the information we found where they said, we deliver to your address. Most of them have an online thing where you can just put in your address and they'll say, yes, we delivered. And so, we'll use that as evidence and then provide the city with a list of the businesses and the evidence that says that they deliver. And then the city can then notify them and say, you advertise that you do this. You need to be aware that you're subject to this. You have to get a local business license. That business license says that you have to remit taxes, that you're subject to our tax, and you have to remit. In vast majority of cases, all of the cases I'm aware of personally that we've dealt with, the businesses have chosen either to do that, follow through with getting that local license. Again, $260 to be able to access a market, they're going to do that. Paying the taxes, the difficulty in it is being able to ensure that they're paying the appropriate amount of tax, because they're not primarily licensed in your jurisdiction. Don't have the same ability to audit them. So what happens typically is we see businesses paying a reasonable amount, something that, at least shows that they're, paying something to the city. Is it the actual amount? That's hard to know. But they tend to either abide by the rules to some degree like that, to an unverifiable degree, as they say, or they just say, okay, well, stop delivering into your city.
Can we, I want to ask that question. I'll surrender my time.
Councilmember Pride.
I don't really have any questions on the ordinance, but Title IX, I don't believe allows delivery into Willows unless you have a retail storefront in Willows. So if we're having other companies delivering into Willows, they're not supposed to be.
They are.
And I know they are, but I believe our Title IX is pretty clear that the only way you can do delivery is with a retail storefront in Willows.
Except that state law does not prohibit or does not allow a city to prohibit delivery from out of town.
Interesting. So as I was listening to that, I was wondering how relevant it was. So then we're back to figuring out who's doing those deliveries. Cause
Who's
everyone,
honest and who's not?
Yeah.
Who's honest and who's not?
well, or at least getting something. I'm assuming most of this ordinance language is language you've used in other jurisdictions and it's been tested for.
Yeah, it's evolutionary. Every city we work with, we learn something new, different questions come up, or there's changes in state law, as I noted here, things that need to be incorporated into it. So it's constantly evolving process, trying to make sure that you have the latest and greatest version of a cannabis tax ordinance for your city.
So kind of along Vice Mayor Thomas, it's just, utilizing the tools to enforce, people that are coming in. And it sounds like some of that HDL can potentially help with, and some of it would just be on our own for identifying and following up.
And I'd be happy to provide a city manager with some information on that if there was any following up on that. My own experience has been the research that I've done on this for other clients.
Mark, and get closer to the mic.
Sorry. I'm not used to being told I'm too quiet. But our experience has generally shown that deliveries into a city from outside are usually where there is kind of a vacuum as far as the market goes. If the community is well served, businesses, cannabis retailers that conduct sales both by storefront and delivery tends to be 5, maybe 10% of their business. Consumers have a large preference for being able to walk into a store, look around, see, oh, what's that, and make purchases that way. So if you are allowing for storefront deliveries and you have them, the city reasonably covered, where, no one's having to drive in a larger city, a half hour just to get to their nearest store. There's not going to be a whole lot of competitive drive for businesses to want to make that that drive 30 minutes to a neighboring city, only for a small portion of sales.
Councilmember Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and Mark, thank you for presenting a well-crafted ordinance. Vice Mayor Thomas concerns in your discussion. Yeah, I agree with that. Something I missed. I think that's a good point to bring that up in annual. At least no more than annually or something along those lines. But no, I think you've covered all the loopholes. I really like the fact that, especially applying to all retail sales and addressing the non-arm's length transactions. I, from my standpoint, all the loopholes are covered. Good job on the ordinance. And like I said, I would agree to include a provision on possibly an annual or whatever limit. So, but I nice work. HDL's done a lot of work for City of Willows over the years, and HDL is one company that does, in my opinion, has never let us down. So good work, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I had,
Pass
Mr.
on
Mayor.
along to
Thank you.
others.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Busby?
Thank you for being here. That's all I got.
If I may, just on the comments about, it wasn't clear whether there was a request or suggestion to include that within the ordinance to limit adjustments to the rate to no more than once a year. As written, there's nothing that requires or in any way compels the city to revisit it more or less often. So the city could set it once and never come back and look at it again, or the city could come back annually or whatever. So it as is, it allows the city maximum flexibility. And if the board is all in, or excuse me, council is all in agreement that you don't want to be, changing the rules on the businesses again and again, then that becomes a matter of practice for the council. The one reason that I would caution against putting it into the ordinance is sometimes something can change in the general market or in laws or regulations or something that could make you want to reconsider the timing. If you had done something, you come back every January, your first meeting in January every year to set the rates or something. And then in March, some unknown factor happens that affects the industry, and you really want to make an adjustment, to fix that. Maybe the county were to, allow cannabis retailers and set the rate at 0 or something like that. And now all of a sudden you've got this high rate that you want to adjust down to be competitive or something, but because you've set a 1-year thing, you may not be able to. So not suggesting what you should or shouldn't do, but just that's, as is, it provides you with maximum flexibility. And if the council is all in agreement of not wanting to do that, then there's nothing that says you have to come in.
No, thank you, Mark. No, I'm all for maximum flexibility. I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood. I thought with your discussion, you were maybe favoring that angle, but I could live with either way. I think it's a well-crafted ordinance. I completely agree with maximum flexibility. So I just, okay.
And we can come
my
across
mistake.
that with the comments and start discussion on it after we discuss that.
Oh, that's all I
And
had,
have
Mr. Mayor.
that
I just
conversation
while
on
that
it.
was fresh, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make that statement. So thank you, Mark. Thank you.
I got a couple quick questions for you. On the non-arm's length transactions between corporate divisions, you said that's standard between most cities, and most cities that adopt this, that's a pretty standard inclusion in there.
It's something that, as I mentioned, for the ordinances that we've worked with, I think 60 or so cities, since 2016 to help them develop cannabis ordinances. And it is something that came up out of experience
Okay.
of cities, or primarily a county that we were working with, that was experiencing this, and it hadn't been addressed in a way that allowed them to capture that.
Correct.
Um,
So like if a wholesaler from, let's say Humboldt,
Mhm.
is selling to retailer here in Willows and they're not related, they could be taxed by this, correct? If the sales
Yeah,
happen.
if they're not related, then if they're selling the product, so you have a business that is a distributorship in your city, and they're selling product to a retailer,
Mhm.
then that would be covered because it's a sale. It covers wholesale transactions as well as retail transactions.
Okay.
But if they were selling it at 5 or 10% of what would otherwise be considered the free market value of that product,
Mhm.
because it's some favorable business dealing that maybe even though they're separate businesses, the same guy is the primary owner of both or something.
Right.
like
I
that.
understand that. Yeah. Okay. And then the tax will be paid monthly or in 12 installments. Is that standard or do you see a lot more like quarterly or semi-annual?
Monthly is standard.
Okay.
The 12 installments was I modified, changed that on the presentation because that was actually if it were a square footage tax, and which is not for
Oh, okay.
cultivation, which is not being done. So that was just uh, something I missed in
The 12
presentation.
installments is more of like if we had a wholesaler come in there. So it's language that we may need if we approve a different type of cannabis
Yeah,
business.
but either way, it's a month that it's paid in
It's
monthly.
paid in a monthly. I understand.
And the reason that we recommend that is we do have some clients that collect the tax on a quarterly basis, and we have seen that uh, that allows a business to not have to pay their tax until their liability is now 3 times greater than it would have been on a monthly basis. And it increases the likelihood that when it comes time to make the payment, the business is going to say, ooh, don't have that much available. So when they move to a quarterly basis, we see more businesses immediately ending up having to be on some sort of a payment plan with the city because they fall into arrears or something.
Okay. And then finance director may promulgate rules as necessary. What type of rules would those be that our finance director would be
In the
implementing?
simplest way, that would be if the finance director were to say, these licenses, we're only going to be issuing, doing this on, Tuesdays or whatever. There's only one day a week that we're going to be open for this activity, or something like that, or whatever.
Gotcha.
Or
Okay.
or determining the means of how the tax is to be remitted. Whether if it's cash, does that mean you have to in the door? It's things like that. It's not
Okay.
that the finance director can
Because it's a
completely write
cash-based
the ordinance.
business, we might require some
Yeah,
extra.
it's just the details of
Okay.
implementation.
And then the initial term of 1 year, is that meaning their first year of business as a business or the initial term of 1 year when we initially start the tax?
It'd be the initial term of 1 year from when they get the license, whether or not
Okay.
it's very common with cannabis businesses because they are highly regulated that when they get their regulatory permit, when they get their tax, their business license, um, that doesn't necessarily mean that boom, they're up and running.
Right.
There are some businesses that spend years in the process and never actually get their doors open. But it does mean that the does have an initial term of 1 year. So, obviously businesses want to get, want to know that they're going to be able to have their license and their permit before they go investing a whole lot of money into the operations of the business.
Gotcha.
So it tends to usually, overlap to some degree.
So if our initial rate is, let's say 4% for the initial term, we could say it's only going to be 2% for that first year. Or am I looking into that wrong?
Well, because it's percentage wise,
Mhm.
it's if they're only open for 6 months, then they're only paying that 4% tax rate, as you said,
Right.
for 6 months rather than for a full year.
Okay. So it's not designed to be broken up that way. Because my thought is a first year of a business is they have a lot of startup costs. They're trying to earn their investment back, right? They invested money. So think that was all of my questions that I had. Thank you. And then we'll be opening this up to public comment.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you guys? I'm Melissa White. I'm the owner of Cali Love, your retail dispensary owner. Thank you so much for making a presentation. And I just wanted to come and be the face of what actually is on the screen. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of background as far as how the tax is compounded and where our thresholds. Cannabis knows everything about tax. We're taxed at every single aspect of the way, from our POS system to every daily aspect. Add zeros once you add cannabis. Your question, sir, about CBD, we are taxed in the same. Anything that comes through my retail store, I am taxed 40% compounded tax on my gross sales between,
So
it's compounded. So your
I
city,
get that. So the store that advertises CBD that's not cannabis, they don't have to pay the tax.
none of your stores pay tax. Your smoke shop that sells CBD and illegal cannabis, they don't pay tax. The delivery service, there is absolutely no way. And the DCC does say that if you are a licensed dispensary owner, you can deliver in the state of California. Most of the people that are delivering to Willows are not licensed DCC cannabis holders. And the only way, if they were, would be for Marty Brown to get into Metric and be trained by Metric to be able to track that. It's not an easy feat. So to say, I'm going to tax the people that are coming from out of town, there's no possible way for you guys to, it would be a full-time job just for her to wean through all the Metric. Your constituents want to support the local business. It has been exactly what you guys hoped happened. We are seeing 65 to 120 people downtown Willows every day. On the weekends, when it's usually desolate, we're seeing 80 people a day. So you guys did a really good thing. I know a lot of people were a little concerned about it being downtown, but what you were trying to accomplish worked with it being downtown. We're bringing people from Orland, we're bringing people from Stony Ford, we're bringing people from all over the area that wouldn't be coming to Willows if the dispensary wasn't downtown. So that's really good. All the other businesses are very excited. Now with the tax, when you put in, we call it an arm, when you make it flexible like that, where you say, okay, I've seen it a couple of different ways. I'm going to use Reading, for instance. Reading did the same thing, and they said on a cultivation tax, they said, okay, we're only going to bring it back it will only bring it for a tax increase or decrease if 3 board of supervisors or city council members votes on it, says, I want to bring that back onto the agenda to raise the tax. Now, City of Reading just recently did that, and they taxed 7 of us cultivators out of business. They wanted $250,000 from me, as I owned a nursery there, before I even turned a light on. Now, cannabis is used to being taxed. We have a lot of moving parts. It is always fluctuating. Now, it's 15% compounded right now through the state. And the state it compounds your city tax, that gets compounded onto your gross sales. And then that number combined then compounds the excise tax. Those 2 numbers combined then compound the sales tax. So the taxation, we're definitely taxed. We want there to be a tax in the city of Willows. We do not want to tax your constituents out of shopping. Let's talk about Chico and the surrounding areas. The Sisters Dispensary in Calusa is a reservation dispensary. They are not regulated by the DCC. They pay no taxes. Then you go to Chico, where it's all corporations, right? I'm a small mom and pop. I'm a cultivator in Trinity County as well. They have so many stores that they are already getting it probably at 25% less cost than I am. Their sales tax is 9.25, and their excise tax for their city cannabis tax is 5%. Your people are used to going to Chico for doctor's appointments, for Costco's. If you tax us too high, they will just continue to go there. That's what they'll do. They'll go back to what they're used to. We are cheaper now then Chico. We're donating 2% of our gross sales monthly. They are normally quarterly. Any tax I have dispensaries in 3 different counties. It's always quarterly. It's a strain on business owners to, once you get up to a certain threshold, you are taxed by the CDFTA monthly, but you have to be over a giant threshold. Another thing I wanted to touch on base with you is I don't want you to feel that we didn't hold our part. In the last meeting, there was some numbers thrown out of $5 million. That is absolutely not even feasible in any way, shape, or form in this community. We didn't think that it could ever be $5 million. None of us, the others, just shop and myself, never once did we think it's going to be $5 million. To hear that number, I just don't want you guys to be disappointed. Like, we're not producing for you. We're not, because we really are trying, you know, and I just got to tell you, the people of Willows are so excited. They're so excited they don't have to drive anymore. They're so excited. And I think if you guys structure this tax right and you structure it for your people of the city of Willows, that's going to make it beneficial for everyone. They're going to jump on board. If you say, I might tax you 10%, because when it comes down to it, it's your constituents that have to, I take a burden of it, but so do your constituents, right? So do all your people. And the people of Willows, they want to support. They want to support, you know, the taco guy next door and the coffee shop down the street. The Red 88, they want to support all these businesses, but you just don't want to overtax them because that's just, they can't afford it, you know? And okay, let me go through this. In 2028, we're going to get an increase again to 19% from the state. They jumped it up to 19%, but 150 retailers went under in that quarter because we're so overly taxed right now. And federal legalization is coming down, and there's going to be another tax on top of that. So there's this kind of funnel thing happening right now where cities are actually going in at this point and reducing their taxes because they have taxed their cultivators, their retailers out of business. So I have been, you know, donating the 2% of my gross sales, and it's been a great amount for the city of Willows for us just being open for 3 months. And we're really proud of like what we've accomplished, and we hope to, you know, do more. We've been able to advertise at local businesses and the racetrack, and we're really hoping to like generate that. And the racetrack, it paid for my advertising the first weekend of being out there, the amount of people that I got from the raceway. And I tell every single business owner that story. You know, if it seems like it's a little too expensive, it will pay for itself. I'm sorry. I don't want to be too, it will pay for itself. Advertising is really hard. It's hard for every business in Trinity County, not just cannabis, because of the billboard ban and in the ordinance that any business can't advertise off-site unless it's private. So that's really hard for every business in Willows, because how do you run a business if you can't advertise? So we want a tax. We want you guys to feel like it's, you know, Marty she's, you know, all the effort that everybody put in, and it's going to help. We want that to happen. We just want it to be realistic. So I hope that you guys look at that, and an arm, like you said, because it's so compounded, you go up 2% and you're talking, you know, $3-4 on an item just going up 2% because of how everything's compounded. So when you guys set the tax, please take that in mind, that every time you go up any bit, it's a lot in the end because of how it's all compounded. And how are you going to write it? Are you going to write it to where it all goes into the general fund where staff can utilize it? Or are you going to write it specifically? Those are all questions, you know, that are going to come into play. And the people of Willows are going to want to know that. They're going to want to know, okay, if we're paying more and we're donating basically $8,000 a month or $6,000 a month, where's our money going? They're going to want to know. The delivery services, I've heard, you know, that you guys used to have multiple delivery services. The people, they're not using them anymore. We've gotten so many customers that say, you know, we're so grateful you're here. You know, the delivery service was so flaky and it's not tested product. And they're just really excited that is here. And if you do, I know that you want to add, the future development, because whether it's hemp or into your bill, I read your ordinance and in no way did it say, if you guys put this tax in, I can go get a cultivation license. Like I looked at everything in kind of that form, and I feel like you guys are pretty safe as far as like putting that in, as far as like, I'm going to tax this maybe in the future, because maybe you want a distribution. And let me touch on that just a little bit. I don't know if I only have 3 minutes, but when he
You're
was
educating me, so I'm going to let you keep going. I'm
Oh.
learning so much right now from listening, so I wasn't even worried
Okay.
about the time.
As far as the distribution, so the way that it works, I'm going to use myself as an example because I'm a cultivator in another county and I own retail in multiple counties. I do not own distribution though. So what happened is that the excise tax used to be on the distribution, but distribution was not paying. So the state needed to get paid. So what does the state do? They pushed it all to retail. So that way they can guarantee to get paid, because that's where the money ends. So when you go in bulk, now there's different programs that can, if say you guys wanted to open up distribution, okay, you could get a program. It'll cost you $1,600 a month, but you can get a program that will track all of that for you. And it's integrated and linked with Metric, like my system is. So when I go to pay my monthly order or my monthly taxes to you, I bring two things. I bring my check and I bring my Metric and my sales report from my POS. So at any time, Marty could come into my location and say, Melissa, I need to see a printout, and I could print her everything from 3 years back, not even having to keep hard copies because it is in the POS system. So when I go to cut my check, she looks at, okay, here's the amount that I sold, and here's the amount of the donation that I have, and here's my grand total. So that will change a little bit because it'll be compounded a little differently when you guys add the tax, but we do want you to put a tax. Putting it as an arm doesn't give me very much stability, because you could say, okay, in a year, I'm going to up it to 10%, where the market just crashed, and they're going to go to black market. They're going to go to, to where they can get it. People want to support local if they can afford to support local. It's like the same thing with organic. We'd all love to eat organic if we could afford it, right? But some people can't afford it. So they want to support. To make a 10% tax on the people of Willows, it'll tax me out of business. I just want to be completely honest. And we really hope to generate a lot of money for you guys. And we appreciate the opportunity. I just hope that you really look at all the scenarios. If you even just like from everything from like a standard POS system that, anybody runs a restaurant, it's $100 a month, right? And you get charged fees. Our baseline is $1,600. Our banks, everything about cannabis is taxed, and we're used to that. But even like I said, you should look at the cities that have backed off of their taxes, because they backed off of it because they tax their people out of business. So, getting, $5,000 a month as opposed to getting $10,000 a month, the $10,000 seems great. But I can only sustain that for, 3 years, where if I had a lower tax and a rate that I knew that was set, I could, build something more. I'm not a corporation. So, I just keep reinvesting my money back into the business and for the people of Willows, and it was really awesome. We had like a holiday recently. It's like kind of like a fun holiday. And it was so cool for the city of Willows of how many people showed up. We had 350 people on that day come through our door. And it was so rad for them to be like, okay, we're classy and we're here and it's okay. And we want to, we don't want to hide anymore. We don't want to have shady deliveries come to our door or go out to the casino and buy untested product. See, when I get a delivery, it's Metric, tracked, and traced through the distribution center, which just went from testing to packaging. Where if you go out to the casino, they buy a bulk pound and they put it in their packaging and they put it on the shelf. That's the difference. That's why the casino is so cheap. I still haven't grasped all of your people in Willows because the casino is so cheap. And Embark has 17 shops in the state of California. When they buy a product, I'll use a gummy, for instance. When they buy a gummy, It cost them 90 cents. It cost me $4.50. I'm still selling it for cheaper than they are because I'm trying to build something with this community. So our margins are very, very low. I know on paper it looks like they make so much money. That's not the case. We have no tax write-offs. It's all on our gross sales. It's not what it seems. We are chasing our dream. We're definitely not chasing money. And to put a 10% tax, I mean, it would just be devastating for the people of Willows. They wouldn't be able to afford it. And they'll go back to Chico. That's what it is. They'll just go back to Chico and I'll be out of business. So I appreciate you guys for everything that you do. I really do want a tax. I just want you to think of the whole picture when you're looking at the tax. You know, look at the people. And, you know, a lot of people have a kind of a thing that it's only young people. 55% of my people are over the age of 65. So that come into my shop are over the age of 65.
55%.
55%. They want, you know, sleep gummies and CBD is tested. And with this tax, you would still get that. Anything, even if it's a dog treat, if it comes into my store and it has CBD in it, it's tracked and traced. It's tested in the same way. I can't sell. So hemp at a grocery store or at a online or anything like that, it's synthetic hemp. It's not real. It's not even made good enough to make paper with, but yet people are ingesting it because they just don't know that you want your CBD to be tested in the same way as your cannabis is tested. So you would get taxed on everything that I sell in my store. I don't usually sell accessories because there's always a smoke shop. I went into your guys' smoke shop though, and I started selling accessories because of what they were selling in there. So I didn't want to keep sending my customers over to a place that was going to sell them things that aren't tested. And I don't even know how they have them. Like when a smoke shop has products that I have on my shelf that are tested through metric and track and trace, and they don't have a DCC license, that product is bad. That product means that product has failed and somehow they got that into that market. So that's not a good look for your town. So I don't send people there anymore. So I've brought in accessories and people are grateful for that because they don't want to have to go there either to buy their rolling papers and stuff. But thank you guys so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you do make a tax that you guys are comfortable with. And we are really hoping that in the future that we can keep producing for you guys. And, but in no way ever will it be $5 million. Maybe 7 years ago it would have been, but you know, if we both stores did 2 million or, you know, split $1 million, we would both be elated. You know, it seems like it's not that much, but it's a lot, you know, it's for one business to bring, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars that's huge for, you know, a small community. So, and I really do encourage you guys to look in the grants because I'm an equity applicant. You guys are eligible for a grant for issuing me my license. Joe is aware of the grant from this DCC, and it's $300,000. And you guys are eligible for that grant. So I would look into that because and that can be used in your general fund. You know, it could be used for anything, any staff, anything. And that is straight from the DCC from the state of California because I'm an equity applicant and you guys, technically you had an ordinance, but you hadn't issued anybody a license. So when I reached out to the DCC before I started this process, they said this city would absolutely be in, you know, could get the grant. I'm not sure. I forwarded it to Joe years ago when I first started the project. So I'm not sure what the follow-up is, but I would look into all of that because you guys have 2 dispensaries here and, you know, it'd be nice if you guys got, you know, some extras too. But thank you guys so much. And thank you so much for working so hard. I know this is a really touchy subject and I hope that you guys are hearing good things about our shop and that we're making you proud. So
Thank you,
Thank you for the
Melissa.
time.
Thank you, Melissa.
You
I
know,
would
I'd
have to say,
like to make a quick comment. The most exciting news that you mentioned up here was the fact that you have about 1,000 people on the streets each week.
it's
And
unbelievable.
that's ultimately, and I was a proponent of bringing the dispensaries
Downtown. I know.
because that's what we need is foot traffic. And
The
so I think that's excellent. I just want to compliment. We don't need to go beyond
okay.
that.
Thank you.
This is, you just reaffirmed for me what I
You
really
worked so
think would
hard.
happen.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Melissa, I would encourage you to attend the meeting when we actually, down the road, when we actually discuss setting the tax. Yeah, thank you. Anyway, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I have heard good things. And I did hear of a couple people that weren't willing to wait in the line on April 20th, but I did hear it was a long one. So thank you. With that, discussion. Pleasure of the council.
Move to approve the item.
I have a couple things on here. For one, I don't know if I'm a fan of the non-arm or the divisions of taxing same owner as it moves down their supply line. To me, that's like taxing used items. Somebody's already paid full tax on it, and then you're going to tax the same thing again. To me, that doesn't make sense. So if we're going to tax it, I think it just needs to be at the point of sale here that we have, whether that is as a distributor or as a retail.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
The arm's length provision is only for cultivation, and we are currently not approving any kind of cultivation in the city of Willis.
Correct. But if, for example, if you're and you might need to correct me on this, this is how I'm understanding this is, if you're cultivating outside of City of Willows and you're selling it to yourself, then this would still apply if you're selling that as a retail product here.
The non-arm's length transaction is meant to capture the value of the business activity that's happening within the City of Willows. It's not meaning to add to the tax to bring in double taxation. That a business can only be taxed on the same activity, the same portion of value of the product once, regardless of what jurisdiction it's in. So if a business at some future point, if the City of Willows were to allow, and it can be any wholesale activity, but so whether it's cultivation or maybe it's a manufacturer in the City of Willows, and they're creating that product, but then they have their distribution entity that's located outside the City of Willows in a jurisdiction with a lower tax rate. And so they say, there is no sale, we're just moving it over here. And oh yeah, that business that we're licensed to conduct here, we're not paying any tax because
Gotcha.
there's
Okay.
no sale happening.
I misunderstood that initially. And then another thing I was thinking was, is there a way to provide a limit to limit the percentage of an increase each time we adjust it with a cool off period? Saying, hey, we can only increase this by 2% and it requires a 2-year cool off or a 1-year cool off period before we can make another increase or adjustment to it.
With the ordinance as it sits,
Mhm.
if it were to pass in its current form,
Mhm.
the city council could come back and enact as policy among you, or practice or protocol, however you want to frame that, either as just a general agreement or perhaps by resolution or something you could establish. This is how we are going to come back and visit this. So you'd have the ability to do that. If you wanted to put it into the ordinance itself,
Mhm.
then recognize that that would become binding upon you in a way that, if some situation were to arise where, as I said, something happens and all of a sudden that, 4% rate that you put into place suddenly is, way too high because everyone else around you has reduced theirs to 1% or whatever. And you want to be able to act upon it. That if you have something within the ordinance, that you're now bound by that and you can't change it other than by ordinance, and to have to think about the details of that with a voter approved ordinance. There's certain pieces that would be allowed, the council can adjust, and there's certain things, if it was put in there, if it was an understanding of the voters that you will not come back to adjust this more often than X schedule, arguably you would not be able to respond by changing the ordinance without putting it in front of the voters.
Another ballot. So we can do that after the fact then?
Well, I don't know about that, but a quick question. So under that scenario with the cooling off, a future council that doesn't have this background and history and understanding could suddenly say, you know what, we're going to raise it to 10%. And then 3 months later, Callie Love comes in and says, you're killing us. I'm going to have to close down in another 30 days if you don't do something. and now you have this cooling off period and you're not allowed to bring it back again. I mean, that could work in that scenario as well, right?
Yeah.
You have a 2-year cooling off period and now you're stuck.
Well, and it would only be to the aspect of increasing it again. My thought is it goes down to 1%. Let's say it goes down to 1% because, like you said, the market turns downward. So we reduce it to 1, then we increase it to 3%. Then we would have a cooling off period before we could increase it again.
So-
Decreasing it back would not be a problem, but increasing it, I'm trying to protect the businesses, as Vice Mayor Thomas said earlier. They got to account for this. You can always account to save extra money, never account to spend extra money that we don't have. So, especially with expenses. So that's where my thought process was on it. But that might be a city attorney, city manager question as to whether or not we can do that by resolution after the ballot's passed.
I don't think you could. I think you'd have to include it.
Or would you have to
Now.
include it now?
Yeah.
So as I understand what you're saying then is to say that the council cannot increase the rate of the tax after initially setting it, after adoption. The city cannot increase it more often than annually.
Once
2
every
years,
12 months or 24 months.
whatever schedule
Right.
you come up with. But the council may decrease it as it sees fit.
At any
Is that
time.
what I hear you saying?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, if you, anything that if you do it by ordinance, and if the council was in agreement that you wanted to have something like that so that you can't, so that the future council can't come back and say, there's a complete changing of the guard, and now you've got a council that, does not want cannabis businesses at all and wants to run them out of town by jacking up the rates, then, yeah, you could do something like that, and that would be binding on future councils. If you do something by resolution, of course, it can be changed by resolution.
Right.
So,
Well, my concern is a knee-jerk reaction to, let's say, where we were at 18 months ago, where we didn't know where we were budgetarily. All of a sudden, we're like, well, we can just tax cannabis, or we have these extra taxes.
Yeah.
We're just going to jump them up to their max value. Right now, when we're at 2%, we go up to 10, and that's going to clear up all of our deficit issues that we have for this year. A knee-jerk reaction like that isn't good for the long term. Short term, it looks great. Long term, it's not going to work out because then we're going to be potentially closing businesses.
yeah,
And so I want to try and make sure we're protecting ourselves from a knee-jerk reaction
yes.
and harming us long term again.
You make zero
So-
revenue from businesses that go out of business.
Correct. So
And, to the previous speaker's comments, there is an issue with, that's not really unique to cannabis businesses, but really highlighted in the relationship between the city and the business with the tax issue, that there now becomes effectively a symbiotic relationship where the city now has a direct interest in the well-being of the business and the success of the businesses. And so when, there are certainly councils that I've spoken to where there have been some, very outspoken people who, there's nothing that is ever going to change their minds about cannabis businesses, the industry, whatever. That, think, well, if we're going to have them, we might as well, tax the heck out of them at some massive rate. And that piece of, well, you're not going to generate revenue from them unless they succeed. So it's the two become somewhat tied together in that way.
So that's my recommendation on a possible change to it. I'll leave that. So
I have a question, if I
Yeah.
could. So in just going back to something that was said earlier by Melissa about paying quarterly versus monthly installments.
yes, thank you.
Currently in the ordinance, it's monthly installments, but could we also allow the finance director that kind of flexibility to make a decision about frequency, or is that not, we really have to etch it out in stone in the ordinance itself? Because we did have an internal discussion at one point between myself and the finance director about, should it be quarterly, should it be monthly? I think from our perspective, we thought it was cleaner and easier to just be on a monthly cycle with the dispensaries. But, I heard what you said. And if there's, I don't think it has to be like that. And so I'm just wondering, is there flexibility in the ordinance to have the finance director make a judgment call on something like that, or to write it in such a way that,
If it were added into the ordinance that, I think that it'd probably be best to have a starting point. And then, allow that the finance director, may, and whether that's, with concurrence of the city manager or with concurrence of the council, or just, the finance director, under their own authority, could adjust the payment schedule, provided that I would suggest putting some limitation on it, provided that it's no,
more than quarterly or
Yeah.
something like that. If that's okay with the council, I'd like to add that language because I do want to be supportive and flexible about it.
When you bringing that up was, I just didn't write it down. It was one of my things that popped in my head, but I forgot to write it down. So yeah, I
So can
do.
we add some language like
I-
that if that's okay with the council?
I think that's
An
reasonable.
option between quarterly or monthly installments.
Just that the
Like,
finance director can make a certain judgment call that will be flexible anywhere between a month and quarterly, but not to exceed quarterly, because I don't think we would want to go any further than that. And then we can make an internal judgment call and work with the dispensaries on it.
Flexibility is important.
So I had a question for Mark. Listening to Melissa and with our proposed ordinance being a maximum of 10%, is that too high? I mean, I'm looking at the other communities. I think Woodland's at 10, but 5, 3, 6. And we talked a lot at our last meeting about percentages, but on a success of getting it to pass, would there be a difference between having a max of 8 or a max of 10? Do you think that matters?
I don't think that would really affect
Okay.
passage. That was the direction from the council at the previous meeting,
Mhm.
and the council can certainly adjust that. Generally, HDL, other factors aside, the range we generally recommend is 4 to 7%. So 10% is certainly on the high side. There are a number of jurisdictions around California that are in the 8 to 10% range. And there's also some that have no tax on cannabis businesses. So it's, it's entirely up to the desire of the council.
But if I could just add also, I mean, the state was going to go to 19% like now, and now they're doing 15 until 2028. But what if there's a group of people that start lobbying and pressuring the state? Like, look, every time cities try to get a little bit ahead, you always come in and try to take a cut. And sometimes it's a really big cut. And we're able to get them to go below 15%.
That sounds
and
like a
then-
great letter for the city of Willows to write to send to our assembly
Well,
members.
I agree because it's a personal pet peeve of mine as a city manager that like the minute anything is going good for us, the state comes in and is like, I want a piece of that, right? So what if we were able to get them to lower it below 15%? Now we've also created a lower tax and maybe we could get a little bit more in the future. I mean, we don't really know what the state's going to do and people are going to lobby for. So I think leaving it at 10% is reasonable. And knowing that you're probably not going to get there ever, but like then you have options in case the state lowers their tax.
Leaving it at 10%, as some of the other topics we talked about, would obviously provide maximum flexibility for the council. You can adjust up that high, you can adjust it down to 0, you can, wherever you want in there.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of our goal was it was never
Yeah.
to increase it right to 10% right when we first got here, but it was just, in future
Yeah.
growth, we had to keep an open mind and we saw the highest being at 10%. And so that's, I think, kind of where our decision came from. So-
The only other thing I would add to that would be, from a business perspective, and with the previous comment of what if a different council came in and, you have your rate at 4% and they say, nope, we want to jack it up to 10%. If that's allowed by the ordinance, then a business as a part of their, future, long distance business model, they have to be able to, accept that may, that is a possibility for them in the future. And so it does make it, I would understand that makes it more difficult for, planning purposes for the business if, that's the more of a range there is that the tax could fall within, the more that they have to, adjust and, weigh that in themselves. So it's, it's really up to the council. Again, one's on the one side arguing for maximum flexibility, on the other hand, arguing for maximum stability for the businesses.
Thank you.
You could also say you don't want to look at it, you're not going to look at it any more than every 24 months or something. You could put in something for the council to not revisit increases or decreases anymore. So there's a 2-year stability for the business. That's a certainty. And then they know every
Well,
2
and
years they're going to show up at a council meeting to participate in dialogue about.
Well, and that's what I'm kind of was reading in here is a 2% per their license renewal because you guys have a 2-year license to operate, right? Am I saying that wrong? You have your first year, and then you have a 2-year.
Mhm.
So would those increases take effect at the renewal, or would they take effect immediately?
Generally, when a council increases the rate, most commonly they will just say, as of the ones I've worked with, usually it'd be say in October or so, they start looking at, do we want to adjust the rate for next year?
Okay.
And they may say effective January 1st, the new rate will be X, or effective the first quarter, or to line up with the fiscal year. Something of that sort usually is done with giving a long lead time for the businesses to understand this is coming down the pike and be able to adjust for it. As pointed out, more commonly in recent years, more cities have been adjusting the rates downward rather than upward.
Mhm.
There have been a few exceptions. The city of San Diego recently adjusted from 8% up to 10%. There are a number of cities also that more older ordinances from right about the time Prop 64 became effective, between 2016 and 2018. There were a number of jurisdictions that in their ordinances established a timetable to say, from this date until this date, the effective rate will be 2%. From this date, that date, it will go up to 4%. From this date, and they'd put in something like that. And in my experience, almost every one of them has come back and changed that schedule because they found it binding upon them. And, they're trying to foresee the future in a way that didn't necessarily pan out.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I appreciate all the information, Mark. From my recollection in our previous discussion, I wasn't going to open this gate because this isn't a matter up for vote tonight, but it was consensus of the council was to move forward with the 10% maximum, which I'm in favor of for the flexibility. If I remember right, Mark, basically the recommendation from HDL was to go, like you said, between the 4 and the 7%, basically at 5%. I was good with that. That's not the topic for tonight. I just wanted to, since that gate's been opened here and the discussions has gone that way, I just wanted to throw that out. So I was comfortable with HDL's general recommendation last time moving forward, but I do agree that the ordinance is well crafted. As I had said in my previous comments, not to be and to repeat myself there, but anyway, I think this is a good. I like the way it's crafted currently with a max of the 10% for the flexibility, depending on the market conditions. You never know. Like I said, we can always go down, but I would be comfortable when the time comes with a 5%. Like I said last time, knowing that's not the bone of discussion for tonight, but that gate's already been open. So I said it. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Is there any further comments or discussion from the council?
Other than I'm not sure what we've decided.
Well, I think
There's been a lot of discussion.
Well, I think whether or not we want, I think one discussion item is whether or not we want to include the monthly or the quarterly option in there and have that written in there. Or and the other option was if we want to propose a percentage limit that they can increase it, a limit to the increases. And if
You
we
mean
need
like under
a cool off period.
33.12.050, paragraph B, the city council may a resolution or ordinance increase or decrease the rate of cannabis business tax. Add the words like no more than biannually. Is that the right term? Biannually?
Every 2 years?
Every 2 year?
Yes,
I actually like the idea of not putting any language in the ordinance at all and keeping it at the discretion of the council by resolution. I think we have to trust that future councils are going to want to work with our businesses, that they will look at the big picture. But I think that grants us the maximum flexibility in the future.
I agree, but don't paint ourselves into a corner trying to make decisions for future councils without all the information that they are going to have. We have to trust our electeds. It'll have to go through the council. The council will have to vote on it, and they'll vote on it based on the information that they have at that time, not on the information we have at this time, I think.
Yeah, I agree as well. And that's the nice thing about having a as crafted with the 10% maximum, because it is flexible. I agree as well.
Also very supportive of the quarterly and not the monthly.
Yes.
Yeah, or the flexibility to do what works.
Flexibility.
Mhm.
Okay, so sounds like there's going to be no cool off period and no maximum limit increase, but we still want to look at the monthly and quarterly. Okay.
Okay.
I only brought up the limit increase, and I understand what you guys are saying about trusting our future councils. However, we have
I
been
know
put
how
in
scary that is.
situations due to past councils,
I know.
and so I don't want to be the council that set us
If we
up for
lose
failure
faith
in
in
the
our
future.
electeds, the whole experiment fails. You know.
So this
No
is
comment on
direct direction only?
So,
I'm sorry?
Staff
Does the
direction.
direction
staff
only?
direction only, yes.
Just to approve the direction that we wrote as a recommendation, that would be, helpful. But I don't know if you did take a vote, you could take a vote, but
Well, I would just move that we direct staff to introduce the ordinance at the June 9th, 2026 City Council meeting with the two discussion points that we had today, allowing quarterly billing and not having any limits on when the rates can change.
Oh.
Basically leaving that as is.
Mr. Mayor, there was already a first on a motion before.
Was there a motion? I
There-
thought
there
the-
was a- there
the
was a
city
mer-
clerk was just
Vice
asking.
Mayor comment.
That I guess I did say.
You did move.
Was it-
I
Yeah.
would move to approve. I was approving the ordinance, so I will withdraw that motion
Okay.
for lack of a second.
I just want to point that out. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a while. It was a half an hour ago, but
I will withdraw my comment and second Lori's motion.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Perfect. Thank you both for coming. That was very
Thank you, Mark.
educational.
thank you, Mark. Drive safe.
Thank you.
Melissa.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right, moving on. Item 7B, reestablish Willows Police Department and Civic Center, hire consultant. Recommended action, authorize the city manager to release a request for qualifications to hire a consulting firm to develop design recommendations and a cost estimate to reestablish the Willows Police Department and the Civic Center. Contact City Manager Marty Brown.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I really quickly have to find my place. I'm sorry.
You've been juggling chairs, I get it.
The clerking threw me off a little bit there.
Page 114.
Thank you very much. Okay, so as you may recall from the last council meeting, staff was directed by the council, specifically at the request of Vice Mayor Thomas and Councilmember Pry, to come back with a recommendation and an action item for the council to take a look at the cost of the actual cost and kind of drilling down and working off of the feasibility study or the cost estimate that was done in January of 2025 and expanding upon that as necessary so that a concrete number could be developed for the community facilities district, which you've already taken action on to move forward with preparing for that and preparing for a future ballot in the spring of 2027, presumably. So this item is about looking at and drilling down on the startup costs for literally construction and building of a police department facility. Initially, I think the council feedback was to look at all the different options that were available, including new construction, possibly purchasing a building in the downtown, possibly temporary modular units in the back parking lot, and also the tenant improvements here at City Hall. After speaking with Brian Uller, who was our consultant who prepared the initial cost estimate in January of 25, I thought it would be good to just recommend a solid recommendation for just looking at tenant improvements inside the Civic Center, because we already can build on the staff, the work, the cost estimate that was already done. Also, looking at the other options and how long it would take and the amount of cost to drill down in each of those options seemed like it was going to be fairly costly and quite a long timeline. And I feel like there's a sense of urgency based on our previous conversations around the CFD. So my recommendation is to focus on complete tenant improvements on the City Hall side of the Civic Center, which, as you've seen from the staff report, is over 5,000 square feet all total. To look at reconfiguring the layout in the Civic Center, both for the police department as well as the administrative staff, and coming up with a cost estimate for that to build the CFD based on that amount. But as you can see from the staff report, it is left open-ended, and if the council wishes to add all of those other options to look at and to get cost estimates for, we can move forward with that. And because it was not clear to me exactly which way the council would decide to go this evening, I crafted the recommendation as a request for qualifications instead of proposals, which allows for some flexibility in terms of going out to bid, if you will, for consultants. It also allows some back and forth and flexibility in terms of, for lack of a better word, massaging exactly what the scope of work would be for this consultant, because there are several options in the staff report, as well as developing what the budget might look like for the consultant, because I don't have that number and I don't know what to expect would be a cost estimate to make a recommendation to all of you. So that allows flexibility. And then, of course, that would come back for final approval, both the scope of work and the budget at a future council meeting after circulating a request for qualifications and seeing what we get. So that's the recommendation. That concludes my presentation, unless you have further.
Vice Mayor Thomas, any questions?
No, it just seemed logical that if we were to do anything, we would do it within the Civic Center where we own the building. And we don't have. Need to retool it. Be a whole lot easier. That would be only, I agree that we stay in-house.
Councilmember Pride?
I think there's some options to staying in-house, but I also think that we should look at a modular, not trailer, but building on the city-owned property that's right here adjacent to us. I think that, again, it's city-owned. We already own the property. It would be a building, which they can design them for police departments. It would be the infrastructure costs. I think if we're going to retool City Hall and we're going to retool the whole thing, in my conversation with city manager, we have to move everybody out into temporary buildings while we redo City Hall. And so to me, that's a huge disruption in time. And what's that cost going to be? We just put in new phones. We just put in new software. We're going to be removing all that. When we look at the number of FTEs for admin, I think the staff report says 7 admin people, but we already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 7 currently. We're adding a billing clerk, and that doesn't include our building inspector, code enforcement. That doesn't include recreation staff. So if we're going to put the police department in City Hall and we're going to say we're only going to have 7 admin people, we're limiting ourselves for future development. If we're going to do recreation, we're going to have to put them somewhere else. So we're going to have to build another building somewhere. And maybe that would be a community center someday. So I don't think it's not worth looking at, but I think we should seriously look at the costs. And it's part of that request for proposals for a modular building that could be actually very long-term. I think if you look at what other police departments are doing, they're going that route, and the temporary has become long-term. And there's different levels you can do to make them more permanent. So I'm not talking trailers, I'm talking an actual modular building. So I just think that we should look at both of those options.
Councilmember Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm in favor of definitely utilizing this building, this property. And if that includes, we've got to get going on this. There is, I agree with Vice Mayor Thomas, and I also agree with Councilmember Pride to a certain extent. There is definitely available space in this building. This building is not designed correctly. It's got some nice aspects, but there's a lot of wasted space. And there is space. And I think if a workaround, sure, construction projects are, I'm sure it does interrupt any type of business operations, but it is temporary. but I'd like to look at that option. Keeping the police department here within the Civic Center only makes sense. We also have obviously own the property here and adjacent also. So in the future, if we need to expand, then there can always be an addition. Obviously, it's new construction. Construction's expensive, but I'd be curious to see what the consultant says. If they go with a modular facility, I'd be fine with that too. But I'd like to keep the facility here for for best operational practices. It's better to have your police department within City Hall, if at all possible. And when this building was first designed, city offices should have been on one side and the police department should have been on the other side. That wasn't the case. The police department was in the back of the room. Most citizens, I know this from experience, had no idea what the police department was in the city of Willows. This building was built in 1969. So anyway, moving forward, the citizens are going to know where the police department is, and it'll be a viable, useful facility. And I just think from operational standpoint, it's better we have the space and keep it here, and that'll speed things up moving forward too. So I'd like to have the consultant look at that aspect of it and get this ball rolling, get moving on it. So that's where I'm at. So I'm in agreement with both of my colleagues. Basically, let's see what the consultant comes up with. We have a decent comprehensive report from Brian Euler. It's getting dated now. It's almost a year and a half old, but it's still very relevant, extremely relevant in all aspects. Of course, there'll be some inflationary components to that, but anyway, let's not forget that. So a lot of the initial groundwork has been laid as far as that goes. But anyway, those are my comments. If that makes sense. So, thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Busby.
Always a contrarian. I disagree with the Civic Center because of the amount of financing lift we are going to have to do this. If we double down on the financing, or if we double down on the Civic Center, we are setting a time bomb for a future council and for the city. Right now, what we are talking about is going out and asking for a facilities district to get set up, to have a bond remit to us to be able to pay for this. I think it is in our best interest, in the future council's best interest, and the city's best interest to do this once. Let's not do this twice. If we do it in the Civic Center, we know that is a temporary situation. We do have a very long leash on what temporary means in police departments in the state of California. Don't know how long that's going to go. We got a gubernatorial race that's going to dictate a lot of that, of what policy is going to look like in the state for the next 8 years. I don't feel good about punting a future. Hey, let's say we spend all this money, we go out and we get the Civic Center financed, and then 5 years down the line, we have to go out and build a building. Well, now we have to go again, set up another facilities district, set up another tax, find another financing mechanism. And I think that's kicking the can down the road. I think we should ask the consultant to give us a handful of options, even if they are scary, very expensive options. I recognize that time is tough, especially for pulling one of those kind of quotes together. But I think as a, hey, Civic Center, job done, it's not job done. It is kicking the can down the road of having to come out and finance this again. And that sounds like a nightmare for everybody.
Can I just ask a question? Are you suggesting that in the Civic Center is temporary?
So that was in the report that it could be retrofitted, but there's a number of things that don't meet state whatever guidelines for police departments or police facilities, and that we would only be allowed to utilize the Civic Center. And I could be misremembering this, but we would only be able to utilize the Civic Center for a temporary amount of time for us to then have time to come up with the money to build a more permanent facility.
Well, what I was recommending is that the tenant improvements include permanent changes that would be required under state law, because we're no longer grandfathered in. I wouldn't be recommending a temporary. It would be, and so it's going to be costly. It's still going to be costly. Don't get me wrong, but it would be permanent.
I'm in for that as long as it means we have to finance this once. That's all I'm worried about. We just need to finance
That
this
is the
once.
intention. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think my 2 cents on it are somewhere between Lori and Matt. where it needs to be its own building. You need to only do it once. And I want it to be part of the Civic Center. I'm thinking when we look out the back, we have a really big empty lot. We have a lot of room to actually expand this building rather than building out a separate building. My concern about having the police department here is honestly, it's parking. I can't remember how many cop cars were in this. I just looked at it and the brain fog. Five. So you're gonna have 5 cop cars and then staff vehicles as well. So that parking lot's already gonna be full, let alone with the regular traffic. But that's where the city lot, as it extends out, towards Memorial Hall, would then become the new parking. And that's my idea when I imagine what our police department would look like. It would be essentially this back half of the building. They'd be responding out of the bus stop area rather than the front. I would like to see it be here. I think that's better for management. But I don't think a separate building is the right direction. I think it needs to be part of the Civic Center. I think it needs to be an expansion, not just a remodel. So
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
now that we got 6 different options out there.
Yeah, well, Mr. Mayor, that's what I was saying too. We have the property. If let's see what the consultant says.
Yeah.
And if we need to expand, we've got the room to expand. We also have another lot over here if we need some more parking or whatever. But
So I think that we need a consultant that's willing to look at. I think if we're in favor of it, of redoing the Civic Center with an expansion for a one and done. Hey, if we end up doing Basin Street and we end up needing, 6 more patrolmen or patrol officers, patrol officers.
dating yourself.
We're able to fit them all within that initial instruction.
So what if the RFQ was crafted then to be that A, we want one and done, B, we want something that is cost effective and efficient and affordable, but ensures future growth of the department if necessary, and ensures that we'll meet state standards and have sufficient room for parking, and then see what they come up with.
Yeah.
Because maybe we're trying to solve our own problem, but we're not experts at it. So then we could find out, yeah, the Civic Center is not enough. Or we could find out, yeah, 5,500 square feet is plenty to do what we want to do. Or that's a bad idea. We should build a whole brand new building and only do a modular building. But if we allow the consultants that are the experts to solve the problem based on the criteria that we've set out for them, we'll see what we come up with.
I think that's
But
what
maybe
you're
we
saying.
end up with one only, but then they're only working on one idea instead of 4 or 5 different construction projects that they
Right.
drill down into.
Well,
I mean, I could craft it very open-ended like that, if that sounds amenable.
I just think it'd be nice too, if we're going to redo the Civic Center, that they give us some idea of obviously timelines, and then what the cost to move admin out, the cost of temporary facilities, and how long that would be, because that's a cost. I mean, we can't, and then what's the disruption to business, for the public during that period of time when we're working out of trailers in the parking lot while we're redoing City Hall?
Sounds like fun.
No, it doesn't.
So I think we're in agreement to look into mainly the Civic Center
And
avenue.
let the
event.
consultants
Let the
tell us what they think we should do based on the one and done, portability and future growth and expansion for the city.
Absolutely.
And
And
the
then knowing-
cost of
They have the imagination.
temporary and
Well, and knowing that, they know we own the piece that's adjacent, whether that's a place to put a building and we share parking in between, or whether that's the parking if we go to the west.
They might come in here and tell us just add a second story with an elevator. I don't know. I mean, that's.
Yikes.
yeah, right? That sounds costly. Okay, I think I'm clear on what we're doing. And,
Yeah.
and of course that proposal, whatever comes forward, will come back to the council. I think what I'd like to also recommend, which isn't in my recommendation, is that maybe the Public Safety Committee review whatever proposals we get. There are not, I can tell you right now, there aren't that many consulting firms in the state that I know of that do this kind of work. So I think it's going to be a small list of proposals. I can only think of 2 firms that I know of, in fact, but maybe the Public Safety Committee wants to review those proposals, or the council wants to do it differently, or you want to review, all of you want to review all of them.
I think I'd like to review them all. I mean, it's important to, there's not that many for the, just be at a council meeting. But the other question I had, Marty, was in addition to the cost of a building, are we going back to Brian's feasibility study and getting harder costs on software and some of the soft costs? Because if we're going to go out for a CFD and we need to know what all those costs are going to be. So it seems like he had the basics, but then he also had some that weren't fleshed out all that well.
Well, I think that you made it clear you want as much as you can get that's concrete and nailed down. And so in
Right.
my mind, the successful proposer would get a copy of Brian's study, and so that they have that as a foundational document and go forth and really, dime out as much as they can, and as much as they can nail down in terms of costs, including software, hardware, everything that's part of it.
Okay. Because I seemed like it was very strong on the facilities. And so I didn't know if that was a consultant that was more architectural and doing building design to meet all the requirements and not all the nuts and bolts as well. So it's the firm that's going to look at and be knowledgeable of all the requirements.
That's a good point. I didn't include all of that. I guess I just thought that it's everything that goes into making this possible as much as they are able to nail down, because there will be some areas that we just won't know till we get there, like legal fees. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to add all those soft costs and ask them for that to be part of the proposal.
Yeah, well, I think we need it if we're going to have a number for the CFD.
One thing that I was looking over it, and it's a food for thought item, is I do like the idea of the take home car program and having, especially if they live inside city limits, I don't know how that program would work. It's the chief's job, but not this chief, police chief.
you.
Is I do like the idea of people driving around and they see the police cars out and about. I do enjoy seeing, oh, hey, the sheriff deputy lives over here, and they have their cars out front, and it kind of makes people think twice when they're driving around. So I understand that's one of the larger expenses that we see in this, but I think that's definitely something to shoot for. So
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the take-home car program works well. I think, I mean, we're, again, talking about a future issue, but I think initially you could start that with 2 officers assigned per vehicle and still manage that for those officers that live in the Willows area. So yeah, down the road, I think it's good policy. I've experienced that for the vast majority of my career, both sides of it, and it works much better with take-home vehicles for a number of reasons, including emergency response time. So yeah, but initially you could start with 2 officers assigned per vehicle. They'll stay within your,
yeah, I'm trying to talk chief into letting us take fire trucks home, but he hasn't let us do that yet. I think we got clear direction ish. Marty, do we have clear direction?
Yes, I do. If you'd like
Okay.
to take action, that'd be awesome.
Mr. Mayor, would you like a motion?
Yes, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the city manager to release a request for qualifications to hire a consulting firm to develop design recommendations and a cost estimate to reestablish the Willis Police Department in the Civic Center area.
Second.
A first and a second. Any further discussion? All in
those
favor,
favor?
signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passed 5-0. I do apologize. I am a little scatterbrained tonight.
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
You're
No,
what?
you're good. I'm a little scatterbrained today.
Boy, I have trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's me.
I
It's
turn
not
away.
me. It's me.
All right. Next item 8, public hearing. All matters on this section of the agenda are formal public hearings and will be acted on individually. Individuals wishing to speak on these items are asked to complete speaker card and submit it to the city clerk. Comments should be directed to the mayor and council members and are limited to 3 minutes. If you have any documentation you would like distributed to the council, please give it to the city clerk for distribution. Item 8A, weed abatement declaration, public hearing for protest. Recommended action, hold a public hearing and upon conclusion, consider adoption of a resolution confirming the declaration of a public nuisance and that the city contractor will begin abatement on June 1st, 2026 if parcels are not abated. Fire Chief Nathan Muck.
Good evening, council. This is the first public hearing of two, I guess three, since we had one last meeting as well due to administrative oversight on my part. This is the opportunity for members in the community and property owners who receive notices to protest the determination that the weed abatement notice was outside the purview of the code and not a violation. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Both my houses on here.
I'm not sure.
Would you,
I know last year,
would you like to take a seat?
last year we got both of them. I don't think you're on this year's.
No.
And
No, I did
again-
have to drive down the alley of my office though to make sure that you were doing it correctly. And I was like, oh yeah, there are weeds back there.
Is your office going to notice?
Yeah. Yeah. Notices everywhere.
Again, when we do the initial survey, we're fairly liberal with the notices because if we don't notice in the beginning, we can't do anything later on in the year. So we send out, I think, just under 700 notices that got sent. And at the end of the year, we end up only abating 20 to 40, somewhere in there.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Open
that
this up.
just, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, didn't mean to walk in. Mr. Mayor, that just shows you that the fire chief is completely impartial, sending the mayor a notice to his office. So there you go. That's all I had.
All right. With that,
Good job, chief.
any other questions from the council?
Do you know about how many didn't return self-abatement cards?
I have no.
Okay. So how do you check that when you go out? Do they just drive the whole list?
Well, the notice, I believe, yeah. So we go out and we drive all 5 books again. The abatement cards get returned, but it would take another week in itself just to go through every abatement card and check off which ones we got and which ones. So it's about the same amount of time just to drive the whole city again. And then that's also when we go through. Like I'll try to keep track of certain things like, hey, to tell the contractor like, hey, I think, because they try to batch things together for like appliances, like, hey, there's like 12 fridges and this is where they're at. So they can kind of they'll do an appliance day and go pick them all up at once. So for the most part, we don't we receive them, but we don't back through, knock them off. All returning the abatement card does is give them, for the code, I believe it's an extra, take care of it, which that 10 days is the time period. This meeting, which this is less than 10 days, the way the calendar, it's basically an extra.
So if they turned in the self-abatement card and abated then, if it grew up again, then even though they self-abated, it's tall again. So then it's a moot point.
Yeah, it could be. That's why we always recommend that herbicide and the notice that also goes out basically that you're taking care of it and to maintain it throughout the fires.
Got it. And then any appliances, you're going to wait until after the June 6th community cleanup day to pick those up?
June 6th, yeah. I've had several property owners and residents that have called and asked about that. And so the weed abatement contractors, appliances.
Thank you.
With that, we will open this up to open up this public hearing at 8:07. Seeing as there's no one in the audience, I'll go first. I'm kidding. We will close the public hearing at 8:08. All right. Does the board have any further questions?
Sir.
We need to make a decision on this at all? We don't have to make any decisions. on
Was
this.
it-
The resolution.
Resolution.
Resolutions.
But there is none.
Resolution, are you ready, Mr. Mayor?
Say that again.
There's a resolution.
Oh, that's right. There is. There's a.
If you're ready.
one-pager.
Yeah.
Oh, 138, yes.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the resolution titled a resolution of the City Council of the City of Willows confirming declarations of nuisances as amended and confirming order for abatement be adopted.
Seconded.
First and a second, any further discussion? This will be a roll call vote. Or do we not need one on this?
I would do. No, not necessarily.
Not necessary. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passed 5-0. Well, yeah, I haven't. I lost track of doing public hearings here for a second. All right, moving on to next item. Item 9, comments and reports. Item 9A, council correspondence.
I believe you have a letter on the dais there.
I have a letter. Does anybody else have anything before I go? Vice Mayor?
None.
Okay. I did receive a letter from the Superior Court of California, County of Glenn. Mr. Evan Hudson, Mayor. Dear Mr. Hudson, I invite you to discharge the 2025-2026 civil grand jury and impanelment of the 2026-2027 civil grand jury. I know that you value the civil grand jury's hard work, and on behalf of the court, I ask that you show your appreciation by personally attending or having a representative of your department attend this year's ceremony. The ceremony will be held on Tuesday, June 30th, 2026 at 3 p.m. in Department 2 of the Glenn County Courthouse located at 526 West Sycamore Street, Willows, California. Yours truly, Honorable Alicia Eklund, Judge of the Superior Court. And that was received today. So, no other correspondence?
No, there isn't.
With that, we will go to item 9B, City Council comments and reports. Vice Mayor Thomas?
None.
Councilmember Pride?
I just wanted to comment the website, the park section looks great. So thanks Carlene and Marty and IT for putting more information on there. I was going to ask tonight if we could maybe get a proposed timeline for the municipal code update when we think that that might be complete. We're still reviewing titles outside Title 18 coming back from Prentice Long. I think Title 18 is supposed to be done by the end of June, but we still have to see a new reiteration of that. And then that all has to be merged back together and reviewed in public hearings, I would imagine. So I'm just curious if there's kind of an estimated timeline of what steps still have to happen and when we might see that come to completion.
That conversation is just now happening since the second special meeting of the Council and Planning Commission happened. So I'm giving, we put all the comments together. We sent them to Harris and they just got them last week. And now they're going to have an internal discussion about now that they have everything, how long will it take to put it all together? So I am planning to come back to the council. We probably are looking at a contract extension with Harris. But I don't know yet until I've talked to them, but I am planning to have that information by the June 9th meeting for the council. And then I'm expecting another round of 4 chapters from Prentice Long by tomorrow. That was what we agreed to. They needed a little bit of an extension until tomorrow. And then after that, there'll be one more batch of 4 for the Council and Planning Commission to review. So that we're about halfway through that review process. And I don't anticipate once Harris is done that the analysis of making sure that there's consistency throughout the entire code and that it matches up with Title 18 will take that long. But again, there's still some moving parts and I'm not really ready to give a timeline and ETA point. But
So as far as council discussion of all the other titles, I know as I review them, I've got comments on every page almost. And I know, I was said to provide my comments in writing, but I would spend a lot of time doing that. So I didn't know if anybody else on the council had any thoughts about actually taking time to talk about the codes like we have with Title 18, because the others are important also. And there's still, when I'm reviewing I'm still seeing a lot of stuff that is, I don't know, old, or I have a lot of questions. Was this, changed and who changed it? And Title 6 is a good example. Title 6 is animals. In Title VI, we used to have one paragraph because we do animal control through the county, and now we have an 8-page code. It's all brand new, all red. And so the question is, are we taking over animal control again and doing it? I mean, there's just things I think we might want to discuss as a council before we finalize those drafts. So anyway, I was just curious where we're going with the process. So
They're originally in the contract with Prentice Long, which now feels so long ago, or I believe was to come back and do one meeting, a public meeting with the council and open to the public to go over it. I think that was what was in the $40,000 contract with Prentice Long. So beyond that one meeting, I don't think there was any additional plan to come back, but certainly if the council wants to have more meetings, we can do that. I mean, it's discretion of the council.
the code is important. We haven't updated it in a long time. We're spending now 43,000 and 80,000 to redo it. I think it behooves us to make sure that we're looking at the work of our contractors. And then the Prentice Long contract had expired at the end of December of 24, I believe. So are we going to put something new together for them as they continue to work without compensation?
Yes, we do need to put together for time only. That is on my to-do list. And they are aware of that.
That's all. I've just got it all sitting on my kitchen table and wasn't sure what the timeline was going to look like.
Councilmember Busby?
I do have a comment. Earlier or on Friday, our friend Doug, who did not make it today, from the Valley Mirror, had a little blurb about the e-bikes and the e-scooters. Suffer an anecdote. I went to go pick up my kid from school the other day, make my left onto Wood Street. I'm doing 37 miles an hour, and there's a 13-year-old kid with no helmet on the sidewalk who passes me like I'm standing still. Let's not wait for this to become a tragedy. We need to get ahead of this. They're going really, really fast. A lot of people are using, and we don't want to be a killjoy or anything like that. I've noticed a lot of older folks who are using these e-scooters as like their primary mode of transportation, and we need to like enable that, especially if there's finances involved. But it is getting out of hand. That's my thing. I don't know what to do about it other than shake my fist in the sky.
My understanding is there is already a law in place
Yes.
that if they do not have pedals and they are over a certain kilowatt, then they are illegal. And so something passing you while you're going 35 is already illegal.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's a
Copy.
sensitive subject.
Copy.
So, but that was just information to give because my son tried to get one of those. And I told him, that's great. And you can keep it out in the county.
Yeah.
That's somebody else's property, not here in town. Councilmember Hanson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's also a vehicle code violation to ride a bicycle on a sidewalk anyway. California vehicle code violation. And I haven't checked lately, but I'm sure that's been extended to those types of scooters. So, I mean, that's a citable offense. So anyway, yeah, dangerous for sure. Yeah, just briefly, May 14th, I attended a Glen Groundwater Authority ad hoc demand management meeting as we continue working on our demand management. The following day on May 15th, I attended another one of our many monthly joint Glen Groundwater Authority, Inclusive Groundwater Authority joint meetings, joint special meetings as we continue to work on demand management, including land subsidence issues. The Glen Groundwater Authority, as usual, had a quorum at the May 15th meeting, and sometimes our sister agency does not have a quorum, and they did not have a quorum once again at that meeting, but we did get our business conducted. And I just want to thank the staff for a great public works event last Thursday. It was well done. It was better attended. Every year it gets a little better attended, I think. And the staff did a great job. The shop looked great. The equipment looked great. We've been able to finally, thank God, get our team members some updated equipment. Much of it thanks to Fire Chief Monk with the grant funding. But anyway, it was a good job. Public Works team did a great job, and it's a good team, and I really appreciate their hard work. And but nice event. And that's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, couple things. Public Works was a great luncheon. I really appreciate them putting that on. It was great seeing Joe behind the barbecue.
Got to see him
It was-
sweat.
Got to see him sweat a little bit, all dressed up, sweating. The directional signs that had been designed, they had one on display there and they look phenomenal. So great job on the teams that worked on that. Planning Commission, I believe, had a very large hand in that, if not 100%.
Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of
Yeah,
Commerce, too.
they did a phenomenal job. They look great. So I'm looking forward to seeing those come around. It was brought up earlier, and I'm just kind of curious if Joe, maybe at next meeting, could give us some background on it. Was the grant that was mentioned tonight? If there's a way for him to see just what it takes to get it. Not looking for a whole ordinance or anything like that, or a application. Just say, hey, this is what it will take for us to do that if you want us to apply for that. But if we're able to get regarding the having a cannabis business in your town,
Oh,
the
okay.
$300,000 grant, if there's a way for us to possibly apply for that, and just do some research. But I think that's something I would like to see at our next meeting, and see if that's something that you could possibly be working on. And we could always use a little bit of extra help in the finance department. So, with that, I have nothing else. We'll move on to the next item. Item 9C, City Manager's Report.
Just one thing really quickly. I just want to remind the public that there will be a special joint council, Board of Supervisors and City of Orland City Council meeting on Monday, June 1st at 5:30 here in our council chambers related to the ambulance study report, that joint report that all three jurisdictions funded, looking at ambulance circulation countywide. And so consultants will be here to present and to facilitate a discussion amongst all three board members. That's it. Thank you.
That's good news. It's
In,
here.
in regards to that, in case the council was aware, I may not be here for that. It's very tentative. Most likely will not make it for that meeting. I already had something going on. I just don't know if I'll be back in town or not in time for the meeting. So that's where that is. And with that, we will be going into item 10, closed session. Prior to the city council convening into closed session, the public will have an opportunity to address the council regarding the items listed below pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3. The public comments are generally restricted to 3 minutes. Item 10A, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Section Code 54957, Title City Manager. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we will go into closed session at 8:21.